What if one of the most compelling UFO encounters in history didn't happen in Roswell, but thousands of miles away, yes, in Brazil? Today on Truth Be Told, we dive headfirst into one of the most controversial and emotional, powerful cases ever documented, the Varginha incident. Often called the Roswell of Brazil, this isn't just a story of light in the sky or distant sightings. This is a case that includes living beings, military involvement, medical professionals, and witnesses who have carried their silence for nearly 3 decades. Today, our guest is award-winning filmmaker and investigative journalist James Fox, the mind behind Moment of Contact, a documentary that has shaken the UFO community and pushed the global conversation on disclosure into a new territory. James has spent over 15 years uncovering testimony from doctors, military officials, and everyday citizens. In this episode, we explore why this case is fundamentally different from anything that we have came across before, how new revelations has emerged since the film's original release, and what this story means in an era of congressional hearings and modern UAP disclosure. This isn't speculation, it's a deep human story about fear, courage, truth, and the cost of keeping secrets. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Welcome to the Truth Be Told Studios for the first time. Award-winning director-producer, James Fox. All right, we have the one and only Mr. James Fox, producer extraordinaire, and I am so excited to have you here, and I just want to congratulate you on an amazing documentary. As many of us here in America, we know about Roswell, we know about 1947, but you know, it's been so long ago. We've heard a lot of the experts and the people that grew up around Roswell, but I feel like this is kind of a second chance at an opportunity to see an experience. So James, let's dive in, and you've researched so many UFO contactees and Roswell and many other events like this, but what made you choose Brazil? Varginha.
I think Brazil chose me. No, I mean that jokingly, because I actually, and I've said this many times, I was making my second UFO film out of the blue. At the time, we didn't have a title for it. I never do. And I always, when I'm making a documentary or, you know, in the early stages, I do very broad strokes concepts, you know, like, hey, let's look into the Phoenix Lights case, or let's look into the Belgian, you know, 89 wave, Bentwaters, etc. And this was happening early on with Out of the Blue, and my partner, and I had 2 partners, Boris Zuboff and Tim Coleman. And Tim was a British guy, and he's like, oh, mate, and this was probably like 1999 or maybe 2000, probably, 99, I think. And the incident happened in 1996, so it was probably only 3 years old. And he's like, oh, mate, you know, we got this UFO crash in Brazil, and the aliens were walking around the town and blah, 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 blah. And I just was like, I am absolutely positively, unequivocally not even going to touch that case, talk about that case, read about that case. Like, I'm not wasting any time on that absurd, ridiculous case, right? And I didn't. And he was upset with me. At the time, he was like, "You're just so dismissive," and I had this knee-jerk reaction. It can't be, therefore it isn't. And then it was at least 10 years later. So I finished Out of the Blue. Then I did a director's cut of Out of the Blue. Then I did I Know What I Saw, sold that, and then I get invited to Brazil, a place called Peruíbe, which was south of Sao Paulo. I don't remember how many, 4 or 5 hours on the coast. And speaking of Roswell, Stanton Friedman was there.
Wow.
In Peruíbe. And I remember sitting at a cafe out in the street with Stan, and there was this island right off the coast apparently one of the only islands on the planet that has this absolutely deadly snake. That venom is very valuable. And so we were talking about this, these poachers that would go onto this island trying to get the things, and the snakes would drop out of the trees, and there's all these dead poachers, and we're talking about that. And then the death of the military soldier allegedly involved with the Varginha case in 1996, that came up. And I thought, oh God, here we go. This case again. And I think Stan said, like, you familiar with the case or something? I was like, well, yeah, I'm heard about it, but I'm not really
left it alone.
And he goes, yeah, that's many people consider, myself included, to be the Roswell of Brazil. And he said that he had met some of the witnesses. He had researched it. He was in Brazil at one point. I don't know if it was like a year after the incident or a couple years after the incident. The impression I got was that just a few years after the incident, he was in Brazil and he met with some of the witnesses. And he's like, James, you should really look into that. And so I have tremendous respect for Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist, and thanks to people like him and Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall, we know about Roswell.
Right.
And so I decided reluctantly to look into it, and that I would probably, make a quick determination that it was all hogwash, and that would be the end of it. But the more I dug, the more I began to realize, and this was years, right? This process was years, and now it's been 16 years. And then at one point, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years into it, I was like, I think this happened. My gosh, I think this happened. And Marco and I and all the other fellow researchers, we just kept digging and digging and digging. And I was going to include a segment of this case in the phenomenon. Mm-hmm. But I ended up scrapping it. I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. I had a translator. And I remember thinking, this is very complex. There's so many moving parts in this case, and I just can't squeeze it into 12-minute or 15-minute. It didn't work. This is going to have to be a standalone, a film on just this case, which is what we did. And then since the release of the first version of Moment of Contact, there have been some very extremely significant developments. So much so that I had to recut the movie and obviously include all the congressional hearings. And so, yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, being married to a Brazilian and getting to know a lot of the locals, and like I said, Manaus is where my spouse is from. They can be very skeptical about stuff like this. And so I know just coming forward with you about this incident was very remarkable. So I want to jump in with in the new version, it included the neurosurgeon, which I have to say was very touching right at the end. And I don't want to give anything away, but because I want people to see it. But Dr. Italo, it's Brazilian names are difficult to speak about sometimes, but was very touching. And what he said, and he got very emotional. How did you feel finally getting people to open up to you about this incident, when I know they can be very standoffish, especially somebody from another country?
Yeah, my partner, Marco Leal, has been boots on the ground, and he's been so persistent. And we have certain individuals that we've been meeting with for well over a decade that sort of feeds us information. We meet off the record, and hey, you need to go see if you could track this person down. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty convinced this person saw something, or this person saw the tape. And I jokingly say, Dr. Italo was like trying to grab a bar of soap in the bathtub, because we'd get near him and then, boo, he would be gone. And then About, I don't know, I want to say a little over a year ago, we had heard that he was one of the doctors that had seen the videotaped evidence, because obviously that's,
Right.
what we've been going after for a while, because that's the Holy Grail, right? And we managed to get I was actually on a Zoom call when Marco met with him, my partner Marco Leal, a co-producer on the film, and in the Zoom, I was being Marco was the translator, and I got to see him and talk to him
Right.
over the camera. He he confessed that he had seen the video when that's what we asked him. Marco pressed him further to find out if he'd seen the creature, and he denied that he had seen the creature. But then after that, he had a heart attack,
Yeah.
and then after that, he got prostate cancer. And he said that he was staring at the ceiling in the ICU and thinking, if I get through this, I think I can't take this to the grave. His fellow neurosurgeon, Marcos Vinicius, he had died from a heart attack in 2018.
Right.
So he was, and I don't know at this point how many other doctors or nurses also saw the creature at regional. We're we're doing the best we can to get in that inner circle and see if there's anybody else willing to come forward. We have a huge screening with the. I don't know if it's going to be live or if you're going to release this later.
Yep.
So tonight's 22nd. The film's actually released today, and we're having a big screening with the town mayor.
That's
and so
amazing.
we're crossing our fingers that more witnesses will come forward and
I think they will.
recognize that we're stronger together, and the courage of someone like head neurosurgeon at Regional Hospital who's not doing this anonymously. Remind your audience, he's never asked for a dime from me. He's not doing this anonymously, and he's still performing surgeries at Regional Hospital right now today.
That is amazing. And just like I said, the emotion he got when it's that holding that secret in and finally releasing it. And I think people that see this documentary, I'm getting chills thinking about it, about how he spoke about his encounter. For the people that are watching, I'm showing some pictures of him in the hospital, speaking about his encounter. So, there's another place in the documentary where you went out into the countryside, looking for the location of the crash, and again, the excitement of the gentleman showing you the location, the excitement he expressed when he actually remembered where the location was.
Carlos de Souza.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just laughing because Carlos is with us now.
Oh, hey, Carlos.
Looking at him, he's right over there. That's why I looked over to the left. He's with us because he's joining us for the screen for the premiere tonight in Varginha, as is one of the lead investigators back in 1996, Vittorio Paccaccini, is going to be there, and says he put his hand on a Bible and take a public lie detector test that he was shown a video of the creature in captivity.
I love, and what was it like for you when you saw that excitement and you was at the location where the crash happened? What did you feel? Not just emotional, but was there feel like a connection to?
I was frustrated because it was like our first big shoot day, and we were going to be here shooting the entire film in 1 month after 15 years of research,
Right.
whatever it was, and he couldn't find it.
I remember I saw the frustration.
Yeah, but you don't really see it when we were there. It was, I don't know. It felt like hours. It could have been a lot less. I don't know, but it was. And I was thinking to myself, how could this guy not even be capable of
Right.
finding the crash site like this?
Right.
This film was not off to a good start. Granted, he had been back since 1996, but come on, And he kept saying, "No, there's a White House. There was a White House. I could see the White House, and trees and stuff had grown. I guess we couldn't, from that vantage point, couldn't see it. And then we got the drone. We were flying the drone. I was flying the drone around, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh gosh, it looks like a white house off in the distance. So we relocated, came down there, and then, I remember he starts to have these almost what look to me to be kind of flashbacks, and he's just like fixated, and he starts running. And I remember our cameraman, who's a little older, Dave West, he was like, "You guys slow down. I'm having trouble keeping up." I was like, "I can't. I'm not going to stop what's happening right now."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
first of all, he's having like flashbacks or memory, and runs down there and found the spot, and
yeah.
just managed to capture it all on camera. It was a very powerful moment, very very powerful. You can't make that stuff up. You can't. You know what I mean?
Oh no, for sure. I mean, you could see the excitement when he finally realized it. Again, I think if it was me, I probably would have been going back almost every other day just because of my curiosity. So I can appreciate the excitement. But one thing that this really talks about is the encounter of a live, living being, which I think makes it different from Roswell. Can you do the comparison and contrast of the Roswell versus this, and how important is this one versus Roswell?
Well, with Roswell, we really only had Glenn Dennis,
Yeah.
right, the mortician, and Glenn Dennis had a friend who was a nurse who told him and sketched something on a piece of paper about the entities, what they looked like.
Right.
She ended up vanishing. They said that she was relocated to London. Then I think there was a plane crash. I don't know. She very mysterious. But anyway, she's vanished. So we never had any firsthand eyewitness testimony. And the creatures that she reportedly saw were dead. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, I mean, I think there was one other person. It might have been Mac Brazel, but I'm not positive, the rancher, or it was the guy that put out the press release. I'll think of his name in a second. But in any case, the only thing that me personally, heard at the time. Now, years later, there was Colonel Philip Corso, who did an interview with me in 1997,
Wow.
where he had talked that he had seen these entities dead in a casket, I think en route to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It was in Texas or something. So now, for the first time, and I think it's in any case, I mean, we've got testimony, for instance, dating, we got the Close Encounter of the Third Kind with Lonnie Zamora, 64, where he saw these creatures, and his wife thinks that there was some kind of telepathic communication. She's like, he was never the same after he locked eyes with one of these beings at a distance. Obviously Rua, Zimbabwe, we've
Right.
got allegations. But this is different because this was a being in captivity. This was a being that was inside a hospital with the head neurosurgeon. And the head neurosurgeon, after 29 years, that's why he gets emotional at the end, because you have this. You imagine holding something like that back in the world for that long.
Yeah.
That the pressure on the weight of that on your shoulders. But yeah, I think it's the first time in history that I'm aware of, and I've talked to many other researchers in the field, that we have extremely credible firsthand eyewitness testimony of communication and contact with a captured being. So that's how it's extremely different than Roswell in that case, and a lot of other people. I mean,
Oh, of course. Yeah.
the girls, and you got the capture and the smell, and I mean, I don't know how many doctors we've got. The radiologist, we got Dr. Cesario, who worked on the military officer when he was extremely sick, threw the kitchen sink at him, couldn't keep him alive. He's never seen anything like it before or after. Any bacteria act like that. Then you've got Dr. Armando coming forward on the record that did the autopsy on the deceased military officer, right? Then you got Dr. Giannini, who looked and studied the tissue samples, who's the founder of the company that did that, IPD. Said he's never seen bacteria like that in his career, prior or after. Who else? So how many doctors is that? Is that like five?
Right.
5 doctors.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's unprecedented.
That is.
And all but one are coming forward publicly. They're not hiding. They're not in disguise. So, they're putting their name and their face on it. It's quite remarkable. And most of them, except for Giannini, are still working.
And that's pretty amazing, because a lot of them probably were afraid to speak out because of possible job loss or, ridicule in the community. But I have to say that the community itself is very embracing. I mean, even in the city itself, I mean, they definitely, it reminds me of Roswell in a way, how they represent the UFO and the aliens throughout the city. So, which was kind of refreshing to see that the city itself.
Let me say something about that monument you just showed.
Yeah, let's show it again.
I was always kind of confused. I was like, no, wait a minute. Why did they have a flying saucer when all the witnesses say it was a cigar-shaped object that crashed?
Right.
But here's the distinction, and this is something that we learned in the field out there that I really had a difficult time coming to terms with. But I mean, I talked to so many different people that described a disc, multiple discs, flying saucer. Mm-hmm. Moving with purpose, and like they kept saying that it was clearly looking for something. And I remember asking we talk about look. What do you mean? How do you know it's looking for something? They said because it was. And this is entire families, doctors, that it was going down to the end, turn, stop, come back, grid search, down to the end, stop. This one family, that didn't want so the house we're staying in right now is owned by doctors, and their friends or fellow doctors had witnessed the event, and they said, "Oh, our friends are doctors. They're witnesses of the event. They really, they'd love to meet with you." Well, we showed up at their house to meet with them because, hey, it's a lead, right? Mm-hmm. And they were like, "Oh, no, not on camera. We don't want to go on camera talking about it." And I ultimately talked them into, okay, look, I'll film you from the back, your faces. I won't include your names, and eventually got them to admit, to doing that. And then I'd flown the drone a little earlier because I think it's really cool to get an aerial perspective of like where the girls had the encounter, where the capture is. And we started looking at proximity to all these events. Like you got the military blockade, on one block, and then just a block or two away from that, you've got the girls' encounter. Like everything matches perfectly. And then you've got the alleged capture from the two military police. That's just a couple blocks away. So all this activity going on in this one area of Varginha, in the city of Varginha. And then you have this entire family, the doctors, and their house is just 5 blocks away, 6 blocks away. So it's like,
wow,
if you're to believe all these witnesses, and if there was an effort to recover anyone behind, I hate to say this word, but an extraterrestrial search and rescue effort or whatever, that would be the spot, Wow. So it makes perfectly good sense that if that was the case, and if their accounts are true, why wouldn't it be? I know it's a tall order. So then we started thinking, my gosh. And that was an aspect of the previous version of the film that we didn't quite ourselves kind of realize. And then I had completely restructured the opening. We have a 20-minute brand new opening that includes all the stuff that's been happening on the American side. And then we have a couple very quick examples of alleged crash retrieval cases dating back to the 1930s. And I know there was a really compelling video that of a disc at night that we had included as part of a montage of previous cases in Brazil, but didn't make the connection. Wait a minute. This disc that's very impressive. It's in the movie. You probably remember it.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, this disc. And we're like, well, wait a minute. This is the same year. This is just a couple months. And it's just not that far as the crow flies, to the south, and I think it's southeast of Varginha, of the city of Varginha. So it's like, could those two be connected?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty compelling.
No, it is. It is very compelling. And I even thought about that watching it is, first of all, why choose that area? What was so important about that area? I guess we always think, like what was important about Roswell, what was important about certain areas. I can understand.
I think when you have a crash, like all the witnesses described this like gash in the back of the craft. Now we have a new witness, Fabio Furtado, and he saw it kind of more from the bottom. And I don't believe he saw the gash in it, but he said it was definitely having trouble and it landed at his farm. And then, of course, we do Google Maps and we can kind of see proximity to all the various, witness accounts, and they all line up incredibly perfectly. But we also have heard from a number of researchers that the Americans had informed the authorities in Brazil that this object was coming in, right? And it had this gash in it. And for years, I keep thinking, like, how did that gash happen? Like, did a meteorite hit it, or it was struck by lightning? I mean, or did the Americans shoot it? So I don't know. I really don't know. I'm forced to speculate, but if I had to take a guess, I would think the most likely scenario is that the Americans shot it.
Which was funny because in 96, we might had some type of technology by then, but which also was fascinating for the people that's going to watch this. And I recommend watching Moment of Contact, New Revelations of Alien Encounters, because we have the amazing James Fox here talking about it. But the Brazilian military did get involved, but also the U.S. military, which I was really surprised that they mentioned the U.S. Air Force were on ground, which I found very fascinating.
Saying USAF. And it's funny, actually, because I think it was in 2021 when we were filming the Moment of Contact, the first cut of Moment of Contact. And the individual, and I'm sorry that I'm struggling for his name, but the guy that actually saw the USAF is what they called it, and USAF. And at first I was going, USAF? What's USAF? Oh, of course, it's USAF, United States Air Force.
Yeah.
And he came forward on a podcast while we were filming there.
Wow.
And his partner, who's also, I guess you call radar control, or, that monitor all the incoming flights into Brazil. And you have to have Brazilian government authorization to fly into this country and land. And this plane didn't have it, according to the flight control people that we talked with. And that a high-level military official stepped into the room and said, let the plane land. And the plane landed in Campinas, which is where we have testimony from a number of people that the Americans came in and that the debris, certainly the aliens, went to Campinas. So logically, that would be where the Americans would come in and land. And I'm told they had a plane big enough where one or two helicopters were pulled out of it, and then they flew into Varginha by chopper as well, and then back to Campinas, loaded something on the plane, and then boom, back to the States. And that's when the case goes cold. So
that's too bad. We need to know.
Well, we did. I had this United States Air Force colonel retired, and I didn't know at the time that he was a United States Air Force colonel, but he was contacting me anonymously for a while. And he's like, we got to track this plane down, and I know where to look, and and you should do a FOIA request, and then finally one day I was like, excuse me, like, because he's really smart, like he really knew what he was talking about. And I said, do you mind me, like, who are you? And he goes, well, I'm a United States Air Force retired colonel and fighter pilot and blah, 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 and had his own experience. And so anyway, we filed in 2022, we filed a FOIA request for flight records. And quite honestly, I just never heard back. We kind of forgot about the fact that we had filed this FOIA. I mean, life goes on, and I did the program. Right. And then in 2025, we get a response, and it's a response from well, you saw it in the movie. It's
Yeah,
a response from the CIA. Essentially, we can neither confirm nor deny, and based on some act from 1949 or something, it's classified or national security, whatever, you know. So we couldn't even find out any planes that came in. They wouldn't even give us that.
Well, I mean, just by saying we can't confirm or deny, that was the key. That was the key.
I remember this moment with Nick Pope. It was so funny at this conference.
Well,
somebody asked him a serious question, and jokingly, it was just one of these moments in UFO history that I happened to have witnessed. And he says, "Ma'am, I can neither confirm nor deny." So every time I hear those words, I think of Nick Pope saying it. He joked, everybody laughed, roared with laughter in the room, but it was really funny.
I mean, it tells a lot. It does tell a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, in this film, I was very impressed. You had some very high level voices like Dr. Eric Davis, Christopher Mellon, and Kirk McConnell. How did their perspectives help bridge this event with like modern UAP disclosures?
Well, I really feel like, I mean, certainly when Moment of Contact, the first cut, was released in 2022, I don't know. I'm not sure that people outside of the UFO community were ready for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that same response that I had when I was making my second UFO doc. Of it can't be, therefore it isn't. Like, it's hard to wrap your mind around something like this, particularly if you don't have any background knowledge on the phenomenon and previous cases, right? And I think that the media, it was the first time that I released a film that I got not one invitation on any mainstream outlets. It was way more of a grassroots effort. And I remember, sorry, I'll get to your question in a minute,
but that's fine.
But I remember the slow sort of evolution of its acceptance or level of interest, I guess, would grow slowly. And I remember a couple moments on Joe Rogan, not with me, with other guests, and the topic of UFOs came up. And I think the film had been out for a couple of months, something like this. And their guest goes, two of them, separate guests. One of them was Michael Schellenberger, and the other one was Bill something. I'll think of it in a second. Any case, they were like, have you seen the documentary Moment of Contact with James Fox? And Joe's like, no, I've not seen that. Well, what's it about? They're like, well, I know this sounds really crazy. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't, but man, you got to watch that, because maybe a UFO crash and the aliens. And I could see this very like incredulous look on Joe's face, like, oh, come on, really? And then another guest came on, Bill something, great guy with company Minds, and he did the same thing. He was like, well, I know it sounds kind of, and brings it up with Joe. And then Joe watches it, and he was just floored by it. And he sent me a text, and I was in my workout class in Vermont. And I go to this dad bod class, and everybody makes fun of each other. There's a bunch of middle-aged dudes get together and work out and have a great time. It's just men only. And we're all in the class together, and I hear my phone buzz, and I just kind of walked over in the middle of the workout, and I looked, and it was Joe Rogan. He was like, hey, I just watched Moment of Contact. Holy, beep.
Wow.
And he says, hey, you want to come on the show and talk about it? And my response was, is the Pope Catholic? And he laughed. He was like, LOL, whatever. And then, and then the film kind of got some traction. And then, of course, not as a direct result at all, but it's just interesting that, we had the congressional hearings, and then David Grush came forward the next year. And it's like, holy smokes, man. I'd never anticipated that was going to happen.
No,
that we'd
who
have
would've?
these allegations at the highest levels. I mean,
Yeah.
people testifying to a bipartisan group of lawmakers under oath that there's a crash retrieval program, and this has been going on for decades. You have no idea, man. Like I just sat there. I was watching it live, and I just had tears constantly flowing down my face because I've been laughed at and ridiculed, particularly, I mean, I put my neck out with this first version of Moment of Contact.
Yeah.
And I remember I even had fellow members that I had a lot of respect for in the community, and they were, hey, bending my ear, like, are you sure this is the move you want to make right now? Like, oh, that's a tall, that's a huge allegation.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know. And they're like, you're coming off from the phenomenon, and we had the unprecedented cooperation. We had an interview with Senator Harry Reid and Christopher Mellon and John Podesta and a
That's
whole
amazing.
slew of others. And people were like, you really want to jeopardize those contacts and your reputation and all that stuff. But I was like, hey, I understand your skepticism, and I appreciate it and I respect it, but I've been there many times over the last, whatever it was, 12 years at the time, 13 years at the time. And I'm convinced that it happened. So I'm going for it,
Good.
So anyway, it's interesting to see where this is going. I don't think at this point, we've had 4 congressional hearings in the last couple of years. I don't think they're putting the the genie back in the bottle. So
No, they haven't at all.
and I don't even know how this film's going to be received in mainstream now. I we'll see. We'll see.
I think I mean, if anything is so well put together, and the passion that you put into it is so appreciated, but I think people will receive it well. And if anything, it'll open many people's minds again.
Again, I don't know. Sorry, it looks like my is that camera thing on where it's moving the camera around on my side? Is that okay?
Not on your side. No. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I just noticed that I just look like it's offset a little bit, and I don't know why. Anyway, whatever. But yeah. So carry on.
Oh, no. And one thing I do want to go back, because since you did the filming, you said some new people have come forth. And also I want to know about if you, any headway with the gentleman, I can't remember his name, that you went to visit him and he threatened to shoot you.
Eric Lopes. So last night, I'm in Brazil right now, as you can tell by my hat.
Right.
Last night we had the option of going and meeting with town officials, people that have been instrumental in putting some stuff together that we're doing here. That will be happening next month, and or going to church. And we were told that Eric Lopes would probably be at that church, so we were going to and I was really torn. It was one or the other, and I felt like if I didn't respect the town officials that have been super kind to us and they really wanted us to be there, I would have. We could have seen him at church.
Wow.
I haven't given up on him. I asked his wife, a couple of years ago, what it would take to get him to come forward, and she said, "Bring my brother back to life." And her brother is Marco Cherise, because Eric Lopes, kind of a weird little twist, but Eric Lopes married the sister of Marco Cherise, the military officer who allegedly jumped out of the car and grabbed the creature with his bare hands and put it together on his lap in the back seat, and off they went to a clinic, and I think they went to regional hospital, and as you know in the story, Marco Cherise died a few weeks later from some crazy infection. He got a little scratch under his armpit from probably when he grabbed this thing. Inadvertently, it just scratched him. So it's crazy that his wife just said, he'll only come forward if you can bring my brother back to life.
Wow.
Now, things could change. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think seeing people like the forensic pathologist, the former chief of police, the head neurosurgeon, Dr. Ichilo, coming forward. The 30th anniversary is coming up next month. Maybe things will change. Maybe more people will come forward. I'm quite optimistic that will be the case, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I don't want to keep you too long because I know you have a busy day today. But you've said before that that disclosure is the process, not a moment. Where does moment of contact fit in that larger disclosure timeline?
I'm doing everything I can, and I think everything helps. All the efforts, people like yourself and many many others, are all contributing to it. And I remember a line when I met with Senator Rounds in D.C. Maybe about a year ago, and he's like, "Hey, I hear the frustration. I know you feel like things aren't happening fast enough. We have these extraordinary allegations from David Grush and what's happened since, and blah 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 blah." And you see that out there, and I have to remind people, like, we've had 4 congressional hearings in the last couple of years. We hadn't had anything like that in over 50 years
Right.
prior. So be patient. But Senator Rounds addressed this issue, and he said, "I want to remind you guys that these things don't happen overnight. We're not running a 100-yard dash. We're running a marathon. So be patient, And I think it's important for all of us in the community and people that want answers, and even people that are skeptical. It's fair enough. But these allegations at the highest levels, I mean, the implications are so profound. Like, let's support the effort. Let's let our elected representatives know that we'd like this UAP Disclosure Act, whistleblower protection. Get this legislation passed. Hey, man, if there's nothing to hide, get the bill passed. Let's see, right? It was interesting. Dave Grush brought up a very interesting point on Rogan, and we included it in the program, where he says, the people that were behind the significant pushback that they've gotten from a couple of representatives, there just so happens their district is like, right, Patterson Air Force Base area, and, Raytheon and Lockheed, and like, oh, surprise, surprise. Oh, there's nothing to hide. No, it's all ridiculous allegations. Like,
right.
But don't pass that bill, whatever you do.
Right.
It's like, don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do.
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, I know this is another example of a very big impact, not just in the UFO community, but the history of the world is this disclosure. And if this case was officially acknowledged tomorrow, what implications would you think it would have on a global disclosure, not just in American narratives?
Sorry, there's a mosquito. I was just swatting him. I hate mosquitoes.
Me too.
It's a really complex question. I remember Hal Puthoff talking to me about the complexities of disclosure, aspects of it that I never dreamed of, I used to always think like this kumbaya moment, like, woo, we're not alone in the universe. How cool is that? What a uniting, and it would be, but there's other aspects to it. I think kind of the world needs what right now is become more unified, particularly in the United States.
Right.
But okay, let's just imagine it's all real. This is really happening. Crash retrievals have happened. We're in possession of this extraordinary technology. Whatever the observed technology is that's whizzing around with impunity, ain't doing it on Jet A fuel, right? You listen to the likes of Dave Fravor, and you hear about how the fastest military jet, in the Navy,
right,
this thing flew rings around it. I mean, made a joke of it. If you could weaponize it, or if other countries get their hands on it and they weaponize it, I could see how that could be an issue of national. Unfortunately, I can see how that could be an issue of national security, and I could see the American government never giving this technology up. Unfortunately, because of the fear of other countries possibly weaponizing it. I mean, what do you do? I don't know. Yeah. But the biologics, the aliens, like the ones in Roswell and for potentially Kecksburg and all the various cases, particularly Varginha, I don't see how that would be a national security issue.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there could be an acknowledgement of the fact they've recovered some of this technology, and they give an explanation of the reasons for national security, and maybe people will understand. But the biologics, that's something that I think everybody on the planet should know about.
Yeah.
But how they'd go about doing it, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know, because if the president of the United States stood up tomorrow and acknowledged this, I mean, it would make waves around the world, right? But then
for sure.
America would have to prove it.
Yeah.
Because the implications are global, not just for America. And then half the country hates the president, no matter who it is.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know how you do it.
I don't either.
I'd like to see it done, but it's more of a complex issue than one might think.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those things that maybe they're waiting for the right time, but it's like saying having kids or whatever. There's never a right time. Sometimes we just have to pull the Band-Aid off and do it. But from what I've heard in the documentary, I'm more scared of human beings than I would of the aliens or the extraterrestrials.
Me too.
So
me too. I know, right?
Yeah. So, well, Mr. Fox, I appreciate you being here, and congratulations on the great film. Good luck tonight at the premiere, and I hope you continue to spread the love through your work, and hopefully one day we'll see you again for the next one.
I appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much.
Of course, and thank you everybody for tuning in. This is Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told on Club Paranormal Network. I'll see you next Friday. Until then, take care of yourself and each other.